Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Faith for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
To the General Assembly and Church of the Firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God the Judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, and to Jesus the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel. I'm hearing a reverb.
You're listening to Revolution Radio. Church of the Firstborn, which are written in heaven. To the General Assembly.
Listening to the show or something, you need to turn that off, because we are on the live stream, so you can't listen to the show at the same time. All right, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. I appreciate all of you. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Church of the Firstborn, the Order of the Ancients, and the Melchizedekian priesthood. And I will be joined by two of our really good friends, Kylie Buckley and Adam Spiker. They have been longtime listeners of the broadcast and are part of our ecclesia or church community that we gather every Saturday to do the Digital Book Readers Club. And so, Kylie, are you there, sister? She's coming to us from New Zealand.
Hello.
Hey, Kylie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Zen.
All right. Can you anything that you'd like to share with the listening audience as far as website? I know you do some book readings on YouTube. You've been going through the Targum and sharing other things. Also, are currently working on a book and should have it released not too long to the community as well.
Yes, I through our book club, Zen, that you started about 2 years ago, we started reading the Aramaic and Palestinian Targum, and then we continued on to other books. But I've continued that on and set up a YouTube channel which is called The Ancient Book Club, where I read ancient texts. I'm yet to complete the Targum, which means translation from Aramaic and Palestinian, and it's the first 5 books of Moses, which is commonly known as the Torah. So I'm just at the end of Numbers, and I'm about to go into Deuteronomy and to complete that. But there's other books there as well.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah. I've also got a Facebook page for New Zealand and Australia for those that want to learn about the moon calendar and the Lord's feasts. We follow it, which is slightly different to the Northern Hemisphere, just normally by a day or half a day. So that is there for people to join, should they be interested in following the moon and the feast dates according to the moon, the cycles of the moon. And also, yes, I'm just completing a book. It's 2 books in one. The first book is on the story of Anna and Joachim, which are the parents of Miriam, which is the mother of Yahushua, of Jesus. And it's their story, which not many people know about. And it's come about through a collection of ancient books that I've been reading, and I used to read them to my youngest daughter. And she said to me one day, "Mummy, you should put this in a book so all people can learn these things, because the stories are so fascinating and interesting."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, actually, I'll do that. So that's where it came from. So Anna and Joachim is very easy to read to children, as well as, adults would understand it well. But then I continued on with the story of Mary, of her life and what she went through from infancy through to going into Egypt with young Yahushua. And Joseph and others. So it ends there when they go into Egypt, because it became quite a long work. So, it's going to be released very soon.
Excellent. We're looking forward to that. And we have our brother Adam Spiker on with us as well. Adam, are you there, brother?
I am, Zen. Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well, and thanks both of you for joining me as well. Is there any links or any contact or websites or anything that you'd like to share with the listening audience, Adam?
I'm not really on the internet much
Social
these
media?
days. Yeah, I don't. I kind of removed all my Facebook and social media profiles, and I do have a small side business. It's not really. It's mostly a little niche market that I do. It's called deckedoutpublishing.com.
Nice.
If you want things like engraved, design and draw and sell posters and things like that nature, some 3D printing designs. But mostly I spend my time reading a lot of the things that you put forth, Zen. I don't really, I don't really do YouTube anymore except for your shows, just because of how it's changed so much recently.
Right.
So it's really hard to find reliable content.
Right.
But for the most part, I can give out some information later about you can find me on Discord. I have a small ecclesia group of men that we chat with on an app called WhatsApp, where we talk a lot about, we're just lovers of truth, anything from cosmology, conspiracies. We encourage each other, pray for each other. It's just a group of guys that we're looking to expand more into. And that's kind of where I spend most of my time, is in text or with my friends or with your community.
Well, that's great. I would hope that everybody could have a group to gather and to share and to study with. I know Kylie also has a similar type group where she's at in New Zealand, and you're here in the States, right? Which area, Adam?
Yeah, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, so
okay.
I'm
that's
about
right.
4 hours north of you guys.
All right, excellent. And so if anybody would like to, join them in group and discussion, certainly you can contact them or myself, or just contact us through the Sacred Word publishing website, and we'll get you in touch with them. But this evening, as I said, we're going to be going into and looking at the Order of the Ancients, which is an ancient manuscript, the book of the Order of the Ancients, that was written by Elijah the prophet. And interestingly enough, it goes into how it was that those that were believers, how they came together as community after the birth, death, resurrection, the mission and role of Christ in being God incarnate here in the flesh, and how the church, or what became the disciples of his, gathering together with the apostles, that we see even in the story of Peter and Paul and some of the other apostles, how some sold, their entire livelihoods, all that they owned, to come together and to join the church, or to join the ecclesia, and how it was that they communally took care and shared with one another. And so this particular text goes into that, but we're going to be in this show talking about just what is cited in the passage that I read from Hebrews, the church of the firstborn, and how it was that Adam was initially appointed prophet, priest, and king, and that Christ, when he came into the flesh, that what was split up amongst the 12 tribes, with the Levites being the priesthood and Judah owning kingship, that it was united back underneath him and the role, and that when he returns at the end of days, certainly he will be King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And, he was assume that mantle of the judgment seat and bring every knee shall bow, every tongue confess before him in determining and separating what will be the wheat and the tares. And so in those that are worthy, that are numbered amongst the elect, will enter into New Jerusalem for the millennial reign with him. And then there will be one final temptation as Satan is loosed for a little season. How anybody would side with him or join with him in deception is beyond me, but we'll see how all that goes, how all that plays out. But certainly in this time and in this age, the Second World Age, he has succeeded in deceiving what seems to me the majority, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if the percentages are still into play and we see what is even greater than 66% of the population being skewed, led astray, caught up in what is the matrix of illusion, and most certainly don't have a care for anything spiritual or anything of the kingdom, and have no concern for even truth or understanding or learning about the larger, greater questions for our reason in being here in this world. And but before we go into this, I want to give both of you a chance and give the listening audience an opportunity to just get to know you a little bit better as far as your stories. And so I'll start with you, Kylie, and wanted to ask you if you could kind of summarize your journey to awakening, how you came to be knowledgeable of things, esoteric, and even what was the catalyst. I know for a lot of people, myself included, and with you not being in the States, I'm not sure if this is true for you, but 9/11 was the major catalyst. It was the thing that really made a lot of people look deeper into what was being propagandized as the official story, and what the government was trying to put off as the reasons for the larger war on and war of terror that certainly kicked off with the events of that day. Kylie?
Right. Thank you, Zen. I was aware of everything that happened with 9/11 and the war, but I was with the masses back then. I never thought the governments would be against their people or that there would be such deception. I was just like, everybody else in the world. And I lived my life purely as a worldly person back then, and I worked very hard, and my goals were really to gain things for myself. And I think for me it really all happened just briefly. It started back when my children were born. I was married, and my husband and I had two companies that were both very successful. We had, a couple of I had a rental car company, and they were all elite cars. So, I'd set the business up myself, and my husband's business he'd set up himself. So we were both feeling like we were on top of the world, really. And then when my daughter was born in 2006, I dedicated her to the Lord because I couldn't believe that I had this little baby. So for me, my story is deeply personal. But just to make it quick, because it is a very elongated story of how the Lord pulled me out of the world. Because my mother was a Christian, but I had walked away from that years ago. I didn't understand it or get it, really, for me. So once my daughter was born, I actually said to God that, I will teach you your ways. I will bring her up how you want me to. And of course, he took my words very seriously. And it began a series of events, really, where through a lot of stresses that all catapulted upon me and my husband, our marriage broke up. The Lord planted somebody in my business that caused me 3.5 years of stress against the government on false accusations. And through a lot of stresses, I learned how corrupt the governments were for me personally. They were following me and my nanny and staff, and they went through everybody I knew. They ransacked our house, the offices. Through all of that, my father died, who I had built this business up so that I realised later, would be proud of me. Well, he died, so it was like all these things that I had built for myself, including a self-image, he toppled. He really did. But through all of that, I learnt that he was the only thing to cling to. In fact, everything he said in his word was truth. And I'd go to church and the pastor would preach something. I would say, well, that's not what it says. That's not what I have learnt.
Right.
So I came out of Sunday churches and I saw a bit of corruption in one of the churches. So for me, and a long story cut short, the government was buying, well, not the government, but the big companies were buying up all the opposition companies. So, but they really levelled me. And there's a story to all of that. But a long story cut short, I could have easily kept on going, but I lost all of that ambition. It went from me. He changed me. And I could see that the things that this world goes after are pointless and frivolous. They come to naught. And what I realised is that we are all born for a purpose and a reason. And I now, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I really gave my life to be his servant, be his doulos, and he will take care of my needs and be my father and husband and brother, and
Absolutely.
and I will do what it is that he asked me to do, because I have learnt that through pain that it's best not to go and engage in other things that I want to, because they don't come to much apart from I satisfy myself, and I might look good in the world, but what I've learned, it's what the Lord, how he sees me is what's important, as opposed to how others see me or even how I see myself. It's really about how he sees me now. And so, so that's sort of been my story. I gave up my company and I homeschooled my girls, and through that I learnt and studied a lot because I wanted to make sure what I was teaching them was true. So I came across one book and then another book. I think I started with Jasher and then I went to Enoch and a lot of the common ones that are found. And then I came across more obscure ones. And then I came across yourself and Justin, and I was so delighted with your ministry of how you open the pages to everybody, so that all can learn and get this information, because it's very important. So that's sort of been my story, really. And here I am now, just tootling along. Whatever he asked me to do,
Awesome.
So
Well,
good.
thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And you did bring that full circle to, even where we are now, the three of us, and gathering for this particular show. And so, Adam, let me give you a chance as well, brother. As far as your journey to awakening, and was 9/11 a large catalyst for you, and then what kind of brought you to where you are now?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, Kylie, I absolutely love hearing you talk. It is it's so wonderful. But yeah, I 2016 was really when I started to question a good bit of things, and it really wasn't until last year, 2019, in the earlier part of the year, that the cosmology and the shape of the earth, really, that was the big pivotal point in my life. But prior to that, I had been brought up both sides of my family are Christians. My grandfather was a pastor and went to a private school. But between my 20s and 30s, I kind of went my own way. And I had a lot of questions growing up. I knew about the firmament. There were a lot of things that were presented that I was asking too many taboo questions. People just didn't have answers for. There's something didn't seem right about the story of Adam and Eve, and I didn't think that the reason why God flooded the earth, just that it wasn't, something just didn't seem right about that. And I had so many questions that nobody really could either answer, and it just by the time I became a teenager, science fiction dominated my mind, and I was just like, all right, well, nobody knows the answer to these things, so I'm just science fiction seems to have enough of these questions that I can hold on to, and that like how indoctrination works, that just fed me, and that's what I held on to. So it wasn't until, like I said, 2016, things just really I just started to question a lot of things. And 9/11 was a big part. And it definitely led me into a lot of other areas. I had found a friend like Jeranism, but I'd not before Flat Earth. It was more of some of his conspiracy topics and like fluoride and just little things like this, just kind of like little breadcrumbs. And I just told my wife, like, I just feel like I'm supposed to go the other direction. I don't feel like I'm supposed to follow mainstream. And I was like, I don't really know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. And she was very encouraging to me. And like, Kate, I think I need to filter my water. I don't understand. And then I learned about, your pineal gland, and then things with like Dr. Joy, which she presents forth, and just little, like I said, little breadcrumbs that just kept leading me closer and closer. And, back in those days when YouTube actually recommended content for you,
Right.
I kept seeing on the sides just this guy, Rob Skiba, constantly talking about a Nimrod and giants. And I'm like, all right, what's this guy? He keeps showing up on my feed. Who is this guy? And I started checking him out. And I think video one, what was it? I started dozens and dozens of hours later. I've watched so many of his presentations till, Flat Earth, firmament, the Nephilim, all my questions were getting answered. I was like, aha. And I started sharing. I read Enoch, and it's like, oh my goodness, this answers so much. Right. I shared it with my father, and my father's basically my best friend. That's awesome. I can share things with him openly. And he reads the Bible from cover to cover like 3 times a year, just to hopefully pick up something new. Yeah, maybe something he missed. Mm. And from as soon as I got my hands on Enoch, I'm like, Dad, have you ever read this book? And he read it, and we were able to sit and have a good dialogue about the contents of it. He still questions. I'm not sure about the Earth being this shape or that, but I think what you're presenting is very interesting. And I remember on the drive home, it was like a 4-hour drive home. The whole time I'm like, I wonder how the sun and moon actually work. And, has anyone taken the time to figure out what Enoch's actually saying and done the math? So I came home and I spent hours trying to figure this out. And I found this video, it's 3 hours long, of Zen Garcia describing in full detail, of how the sun and moon work. And I just was a sponge just soaking up this information. And that led to, your other work. I probably watched at least half of everything you have published, just soaking in more information. Like, this makes sense. This makes sense. And, just sharing with my family, those that have ears to hear were hearing. And there's a lot of changes in my life. I can relate to almost everything Kylie was saying, just very self-minded, very, what can I do for me? And having come across a simple skeleton key, as you put it, for this revelation, just opened up so many more doors to bring a closer relationship with me and the Father, and him just exposing more and more to me. Just every day, show me something new, show me you, show me what you have that are secret that I'm searching for. You say if you're searching and I knock, you'll answer and reveal.
Right.
And he just continuously revealing. And I just had such a great passion when the Targum had come forward. I'll try to wrap this up. When the Targum had come forward,
you're fine.
Presented with the word of the Lord being hidden, that alone took the Old Testament from being like this black and white VHS old school boob tube TV to like 1080p high def. Like it just opened up the floodgates.
Right. I
could just see Christ in the OT, and how in all the patriarchs and the forefathers, they just came to life in a whole new light, and I could start relating to them. And then when you bring in forth other books like the 12 patriarch book,
Testimony of 12 patriarchs.
Yeah, and another one I can't think of off the top of my head, but basically it's when all the patriarchs at their deathbed would bring their sons and their family together, and it was a time of joy. Death wasn't feared, and they would pass on, this knowledge. They would pass on their blessings and tell their story. And to me, I grew up on a farm, and it's a very intimate and personal group of individuals. We're all about family. And as we grew up, the children and grandchildren had grown up and started spreading out. That's kind of how the world comes in and just starts breaking up the family dynamic. But seeing how that was in those time periods just really hit home for me of how things, I know what that feels like. I know what those type of relations feel like, and I felt closer to these patriarchs. And like, Lord, how do I get that back in this day and age? How do I get back that relationship? And then, boom, the Book of the Order of Elijah the Prophet falls into my lap, and it was just a home run to me, and just really tied in that personal relationship of a family and how they were doing it, and just really connected the dots for me and just opened up a whole new path for me. That's kind of why, Kylie and I think both are on the same page of what this has done for us. And, we're doing it right now. Our conversation that we're having at this moment is literally what this book is about.
Yes, absolutely. Well, very well said, both of you. And thank you both for sharing your testimony. And I think what it makes myself and yourself and the hunger, in seeking, and the open-mindedness to accept new revelation and to study, especially the wealth of information that is coming to light. Because even Enoch describes in the first chapter of his book that he was writing for a distant and remote generation, and that the things that were written therein would be fulfilled at a latter time. And I believe we are that generation, that, the fig tree generation, and that the Most High is certainly pouring out his Spirit upon all flesh. And so the Book of the Order of the Ancients, as we made mention of, it is a text that was written by Elijah the prophet, and it describes the community. It reminds me also of like back in the day when I used to follow the Grateful Dead, and it was like a carnival, just a group of hippies that were going from city to city, town to town, following this band and sharing music and sharing an alternative lifestyle. But really, it was everybody caring for and helping one another and loving each other. And, we'd give the shirt off of our backs to help somebody else, or share a meal, or, if somebody was in need, to, give money. I mean, it was a really communal vibe that I had never felt before, previously. And it's that kind of communal vibe that is spoken about in this book on the Order of the Ancients, and understanding what they are talking about. When you look at and examine what was coming forth as the initial ecclesia, and how these were, families, and that were the witnesses that grew up with. For instance, many of the apostles were the stepbrothers and step siblings of Yahushua, the children from Joseph of a former marriage, the older stepbrothers, stepsisters, that came to be his closest associates, and that knew he and Mary the best, and they were the ones that wrote down the Protevangelium and the infancy Gospels, and that understanding their story and their lives, shared what they knew with the world and documented what they had seen and witnessed, and came to be a lot of the knowledge that is passed on, and which is now even coming to light in so many different, like there's a lot of New Testament Apocrypha being released as well, for
The
public
Apology of
consideration.
Theolosis.
Yes,
That's such a good
many.
one.
Yeah, many different texts. I just released a book on the epistles, the apostles, and the church fathers, but there's a lot of really incredible information. Even with my son's book on the Targum translations of the Word of the Lord, and how all that's been removed out of the Old Testament, there was a book that the Most High had led me to called On the Priesthood of Christ, which of Jesus Christ, which absolutely confirmed the authenticity of what we were trying to bring forth in that manuscript and with that study. And that text in and of itself is absolutely mind-blowing, because it shows without a doubt that the rabbinical Jewish leadership knew without a doubt that he was the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies, that he was Savior Messiah, and they hid it from the world, and it's causing confusion because of that, even in this day and age. But so that's what we're going to go into. We're going to talk about this order of the Melchizedekian priesthood, which began with Adam in paradise. That Adam was, and people have to understand that there is a distinction between paradise and what is the Garden of Eden here on the earth, and that the place of the righteous, the home of the righteous, is in New Jerusalem. And New Jerusalem currently resides above the vaulted dome of the earth.
Right.
And it is, as it says in scriptures in Revelation 19 through 21, that at the end of days, New Jerusalem will descend out of the heavens. And, when Christ returns with 10,000 of his saints, that it will descend here to the earth. And those that are worthy, those that are numbered with the elite and the elect, they will enter in to New Jerusalem for the millennial reign and dwell with him. And so our former estate was in the heavens. We weren't created to reside here on the earth. And it wasn't until the temptation and the fall of humanity that we find ourselves in mortal flesh form. And that is part of the story of why Yahushua had to come into the flesh to redeem us and to restore us to our first estate, which this particular text that I'm going to initially read from, which gives description of Adam being granted this priesthood, priest, prophet, and king, which is exactly what Yahushua fulfilled in his role and mission. But it will give and present that exact story and show to you, in greater regard, it will be this perfect setup as well for what we're going to be going into on the particulars of the Order of the Ancients. But this is also part of the introduction of the book on the Order of the Ancients, which you can find at sacredwordpublishing.com. For those that are interested in learning more about what I read in the Hebrews chapter 12, the mention of the church of the firstborn, which the writings of Abraham, which is also included into this particular manuscript, goes into as well. So I'll share two different portions, and then we'll go into greater. I'll give you both chance to comment after both of these portions as well. And this will probably be a series because there's so much information, there's so much to talk about, and we want to kind of track this down through the ages, from the beginning of Adam, the fall of humanity, all throughout even Israel before and after Christ, and even into the modern age. And so, but to set the foundation from the Kitab al-Magali, which means the Book of the Rolls, which is part of the anti-Nicene church fathers, it says, on the seventh day, God had completed all creation, and he called it Sabbath. God had created Adam in the third hour of Friday, the sixth day. Iblis, which is the Arabic word for Satan, Iblis, had laid claim to Godhead, which had entered him in the second hour of that day, and God had hurled him down from heaven to earth. Before God the Lord created Adam, rest fell upon all the powers, and God said, come, let us create a man in our likeness and form an image. And when the angels heard this saying from the Lord, they became frightened and much terrified, and they said to one another, what is this great wonder which we hear? And how is it possible that the form of our God and Creator can appear to us? And then all the angels looked towards the right hand of the Lord, which was stretched out above all creation, and all of it was in his right hand. And then they looked towards the right hand of the Lord, and it took from all the earth a little handful of dust, and from all the waters a drop of water, and from the air a soul and a spirit, and from fire the force of heat. And it became in the grasp of the Lord portions of the four elements, heat and cold, moisture and drought. And verily God, the glorious and strong, created Adam from these four weak elements, which have no power, that all creatures created from them might hear and obey him. Dust, that man might obey him, water, that all that is born of it and in it might obey him, air, that it might be possible for him to breathe it and to feel its breezes, and that its birds might obey him, and fire, that the heat of forces created from it should be a powerful helper to his sense. The reason why God, may his holy name be sanctified, created Adam with his holy hand in his form and image was that he should receive wisdom and speech and animal motion, and for the knowledge concerning things. And when the glorious and illustrious angels saw one like him in Adam, they were affrighted. The wondrous glory upon his face terrified them. His form appeared shining with divine light, greater than the light of the sun, and his body was bright and brilliant, like the well-known stars in the crystal. And when the figure of Adam drew itself up, he leapt standing. He was in the center of the earth. He stretched out his right hand and his left hand, and put his feet in order upon Golgotha, which is the place where was put the wood cross of our Savior Jesus the Christ. He was dressed with a royal robe. He wore upon his head a diadem of glory and praise and honor and dignity. He was crowned with a royal crown, and there he was made king, priest, and prophet. God set him upon a throne of honor, and gathered to what was there all the animals, beasts, and birds, and all that God had created, and made them stand before Adam. They bent their heads and did obeisance to him, and he called each of them by its name. He made all the creatures obey him, and they responded to his command. The angels and the powers heard the voice of God. May he be glorified and exalted, saying to Adam, O Adam, I have made thee king, priest, and prophet, ruler, chief, and governor over all creatures that are made. All creation shall obey thee and follow thy voice. Under thy grasp they shall be. To thee alone I have given this power. I have placed thee in possession of all that I have created. And when the angels heard this saying from the Lord, they redoubled honor and respect to Adam. But when the devil saw the gift that was given to Adam from the Lord, he envied him. And from that day and the schismatic firm, God set his mind and cunning towards him to seduce him by his boldness and by his curse. And when he denied the grace of the Lord towards him, he became shameless and warlike. God, may his name be sanctified, deprived the devil of the robe of praise and dignity and called his name devil. He is a rebel against God and Satan because he opposes himself to the ways of the Lord, and Iblis because he took his dignity from him. And while Adam was listening to the speech of his Lord to him and standing on the place of Golgotha, all the creatures being gathered together that they might hear the conversation of God with him, lo, a cloud of light carried him and went with him to paradise, and the choirs of angels sang before him, the cherubim among them blessing, and the seraphim crying, Holy, until Adam came into paradise. He entered it at the third hour on Friday, and the Lord, to him be praised, gave him the commandment and warned him against disobedience to it. And then the Lord, to him be praised, threw upon Adam a form of sleep, and he slept a sweet sleep in paradise. And God took a rib from which his left side, and from it he created Eve. And when he awoke and saw Eve, he rejoiced over her and lived with her, and she was in the pleasant garden of paradise. God clothed them with glory and splendor. They outvied one another in the glory with which they were clothed, and the Lord crowned them for marriage. The angels congratulated them, and there was joy there such as never has been the like and never will be, till the day in which the people at the right hand shall hear the glorious voice of the Lord. Adam and Eve remained in paradise for 3 hours. The site of paradise was high, up in the air, its ground was heavenly, raised above all mountains and hills that were 30 spans high, that is 15 cubits according to the cubit of the Holy Ghost. This paradise stretched round from the east by a wall from the hollow to the southern place of darkness where the cursed prince was thrown. It is the place of sorrows. Eden is a fountain of God lying eastward to a height of 18 degrees, rising of the sun, and this is the mercy of God on which the children of men put their trust, that they shall have a Savior from thence. Because God, may he be exalted and glorified, knew in his foreknowledge what the devil would do to Adam. I'm going to skip down just a little bit. Just cover 2 more points and then we'll move on because I want to give you both a chance to comment before we go to break. Eden is the church of God and the paradise in which is the altar of rest and the length of life which God has prepared for all the saints. Because Adam was king, priest, and prophet, God caused him to enter paradise that he might minister in Eden, the church of God, the holy Lord, as Moshe, the holy prophet, testifies about this, saying that thou shouldst minister and declare by noble and glorious service, and keep the commandment by which Adam and Eve were brought into the church of God. One final thing about their fall. When he and she ate the deadly fruit, they were bereft of their glory, and their splendor was taken from them, and they were stripped of the light with which they had been clothed. And when they looked at themselves, they were naked of the grace of which they had worn, and their shame was manifest to them. After the clothing of fig leaves, they put on clothing of skins, and that is the skin of which our bodies are made, being of the family of man, and it is a clothing of pain. And so we see that Adam and Eve, after eating and being tempted, they did put on mortal form, and they were put under the authority of death, cast down from paradise, and they found themselves banished here to where Satan and the other fallen angels had already been banished. And that's when, they began to age. And that's also, Eve would bear the punishment of bringing forth children in sorrow. And then the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent would begin with the murder of Abel by his half-brother Cain. And this war between these two bloodlines has been ongoing since that time. And we see that it is here on the earth that through Adam, we have the passing down of the knowledge which he gained in heaven as priest, prophet, and king. And that he passed this order of the ancients and what is called the knowledge of the priesthood from the church of the firstborn. It describes this as having been granted from Adam to Enoch to Noah. Of course, the other prophets, the patriarchs of his bloodline, but specifically, Adam was alive even from up until the time of Enoch, and that he, the first generations lived a very long time, and many of them were alive together in the first 10 generations. And so from Adam to Enoch to Noah to Shem and then Abraham was led, as we'll see in the writings of Abraham, to become a priest under what in Melchizedek is described as being Shem, the son of Noah. And that from Abraham, then of course it went to Isaac and Jacob, and then Jacob to Joseph, and passed down and was split there to the tribes of Levi and Judah. And so we'll talk about those things as well. But let me, Kylie, I'll give you a chance to comment first, and then we'll go to you, Adam, and we'll, of course, go into greater detail on all this when we return from break.
Okay. Yeah, really good reading. And I just see it that nothing has ever changed. Everything is the same. And what I'm meaning by that is that God's ways have always been. His order has always been. And when Adam before he sinned, he knew God's order and his ways, as did the angels and those beings that were all in heaven. They all have their place, and they all have their areas that they are in, like the different types of angels, the different levels in his kingdom. And when Adam and Eve were tempted to sin and to go against God's order, they fell, of course, and came here. But they have taught his order all the way through, as you've said. And, in nearly any ancient book you pick up, it will talk somewhat about it, about the commandments and about his ways and about, teach them to your sons and to their generation, God's ways, his commandments, his feasts, his times, the way you conduct yourself, the laws. They have never, ever changed. And this is wonderful because you can see it back. I've got the Dead Sea Scrolls in front of me, and I've just flipped over where, he talks about it being an everlasting covenant that God has chosen for Adam and for all of those that walk in him. And that for all of us that we have a chance, there's good and evil, and we need to choose. God chooses us, but we need to choose him, and every day to walk in his ways and not go to the left or not go to the right, as it talks about in Elijah's text, and in the Deep Sea Scrolls, and there's other books as well that almost say the same thing word for word. It's quite exciting when you read them and you can parallel it across, that they're talking about the order. I just, I mean, there's so much to say, but it's also all the same thing repeated through all the generations. It's marvelous when you study it, because it is undeniable that this is his ways, this is his precepts for all mankind. But of course, very few find that road, which is very tragic, because it's a road of him and his ways, and not us. And we all tend to want to go our way. But as far as Adam, denying and then coming down, he also learned from his mistake too. In the Revelation of the Magi, it talks very strongly about how he was so regretful with what happened. He didn't realise the curse that would come. He didn't realise the changes in his own life and in Eve's life and in all humanity. He didn't know that God can't stand sin and disobedience, that he can't look at it, and hence why he was cast out. But he also knew that the Saviour would come. He knew that. It was told to him, Yahushua told him, that I will come. And that's all through these scrolls as well. It talks about that he will come, yet he hadn't come yet because these scrolls are old. But they looked forward to him coming in the flesh to right the wrong and to bring us back into alignment. So, yeah.
Well, one really quickly, and then we'll go to you, Adam. There's a continuity, and what you'll see is that Sabbath was celebrated in heaven even before the fall, as was the Levitical feast days, Passover, all of that, and we'll go into that when we come back as well. But Adam, we've got 4 minutes till we go to break, brother. But now I want to give you a chance to comment as well, and then we'll come back to you when we come back from break as well.
Sure. Yeah, the Sabbath and the festival is just so important and so overlooked. but yeah, I mean, I agree. It seems even more narrow. You talk about how narrow the path is to salvation, and this book just makes it seem it does make it seem more narrow, but it also gives you more encouragement and more strength in your faith. I feel like, at least that's what it did for me. You can call it the 10 Commandments. Moses definitely was passing down the same order, the same information. Moses falls after the Egyptian, the Exodus. But I mean, leading up to that, all the same information is being passed down. So when the Most High presented that to Moses up on the mount, yes, this makes sense. He's just reaffirming and giving himself a second witness of these are my commandments. These are how I want you to live. And on the death, like I was saying earlier, on the deathbed of all the patriarchs, of them just passing this information down, of the importance of it, all the way down to to Christ, where you had brought up earlier the priesthood of Jesus, where they kind of, you think of the order and you think of the brotherhoods, and they're just like polar opposites, where the brotherhoods are basically the order of Satan. And how the priesthood of Jesus, I felt when I was reading that, kind of felt like, they're supposed to be coming down from the Levites and the priests, but they rejected Jesus in the end because they were so comfortable with their own way of doing religion. And sure, Jesus seems to be who he says he is, but that really ends our brotherhood. It's kind of like the separation of order to brotherhood. And that's why Christ called them the brood of vipers. Right. They denied him, and that was just the perversion of what God had set forth. So, yeah, it seems more narrow. And one thing I had really taken away real quick here was in that you just read. I thought it was interesting when it talked about, and lo, a cloud of light carried Adam and went with him to paradise, and the choirs of angels sang before him, the cherubim among them blessing, and the seraphim crying, holy, until Adam came into paradise. Well, that to me sounds exactly like what's going to happen when Christ descends down. It's just the same thing. Adam was taken up in that way, and Christ will come down in the same glory, in the same manner, in the great trumpet, with the angels singing. I saw the parallel in that and just thought that was he's such a great storyteller. It was just beautiful.
Yes, exactly. And, there's lots of stories that also speak about the different clouds coming to assist the saints when they take them to different places. Even Moshe was said to take a cloud to the top of the firmament in order to receive the Torah. And so you see a lot of descriptions of clouds assisting in that way in different stories. And so, how all that plays out. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of parallels in that regard. But anyways, we are at break, so we'll be right back in 9:02, everyone. Hold on. And we'll be right back in a short bit for second hour.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and we are streaming out of Studio B. And I just appreciate everybody joining us in live broadcast. We also are streaming on our YouTube channel, Zen Garcia, and you can go there to join the chat room and the live discussion. And we are covering the book of the Order of the Ancients, which I want to share one more thing from the writings of Abraham about this Church of the Firstborn, and then I'll go back to both Kylie and Adam, give them a chance to comment, and then we're going to move forward in talking about the ins and outs, the who's, why, what, where, and all of that with regard to the order. But this, again, will help to bring forth how this knowledge and this teaching and these feast days were passed down. Even Passover and all of the Levitical feast days, they are celebrated in heaven before the fall of humanity, as is Sabbath, and they will be celebrated afterwards, as we see cited in Isaiah chapter 66, where it speaks about from Kadesh to Kadesh and from Sabbath to Sabbath, that the feast days will be after the millennial reign continued, and that every nation shall come and bow before Yahuwah. And so from chapter 97 of the writings of Abraham, it says, "And when I had done this, Melchizedek again lifted up his voice and blessed me, saying, Blessed art thou, Abraham, for the Most High God shall visit thee and shall bestow upon thee riches and honor and lands for an everlasting possession, because thou hast been true and faithful to the covenants which thou hast entered before him. Wherefore thou shalt continue to increase worlds without end, and the glory of the Lord shall never depart from thee. The blessings of thy fathers shall rest upon thee, and thou shalt stand at the head, and in thee and in thy seed after thee, those who shall bear thy priesthood, shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Therewith I departed from Melchizedek, rejoicing in his blessing, for he was a man of faith, who wrought righteousness, and when a child he feared God, and by his faith he stopped the mouths of lions, and quenched the violence of fire, when those of the evil combination sought to destroy him from off the face of the earth. Therefore, having been approved of God, he was ordained a high priest after the order of the covenant which God made with Enoch, which is after the order of the firstborn, even our father Adam. For this holy order came not by man, nor the will of man, neither by father nor mother, neither by beginning of days nor end of years, but of God. For it was established in the beginning of the earth by the ancients of days, wherefore it is called the order of the ancients. And it was delivered unto men from the beginning by the calling of God's own voice, according to his own will, through the voice of his priesthood, unto as many as believed on his name, and were faithful until they had obtained. Behold, these could transcend the veil, according to the will of God, and commune with the general assembly and the church of the firstborn in heaven, and many were caught up to be with them. For God has sworn unto Enoch and unto his seed with an oath by himself, that everyone being ordained after this order and calling should have power by faith to break mountains, to divide the seas, to dry up waters, to turn them out of their course, and to put at defiance the armies of nations, to divide the earth, to break every band and to stand in the presence of God, and to do all things according to his will, according to his command, to subdue principalities and powers, and this by the will of the Son and the only begotten of the Father, which was from before the foundation of the world. And men having this faith and coming up unto this order of God could be translated and taken up to heaven. Now, Melchizedek was a priest after this order, which is the holy order of God, and therefore he obtained peace in Shalom and was called the Prince of Peace. And his people wrought righteousness and obtained heaven, for they sought for the city of Enoch, which God had before taken, separating it from the earth, having reserved it unto the latter days, or the end of the world. For God hath said and sworn with an oath that the heavens and the earth should come together again, and the sons of God be tried even by fire. And thus Melchizedek, having established righteousness, was called the King of heaven by his people, or in other words, the King of peace. And they communed with those in the city of Enoch and in the city of Peleg, and had access to them, and were blessed all their days. The writings of Abraham, chapter 97 through 100. And so the first thing I want to make mention of is that we see that the city of Enoch, which was here upon the earth and which was, according to the story, separated and taken up into heaven, it is my opinion that this is what became the foundation for the establishment of New Jerusalem in heaven, that it played a part in what Christ said, that I go now to prepare a place before you, that in my Father's house are many mansions, and that it was from this city of Enoch that he has built upon and established and created for all the number and all the rest of the righteous that have come into to being into the flesh and to being born into this world since the time that he took Adam and his righteous descendants back up into paradise, which, if you don't know that story, please visit the gospel of Nicodemus, because it tells you how Adam and all of those that were that had died before Christ came into the flesh have been redeemed and restored unto their first estate, and that they were baptized in the Arturian lake, and they met the thief on the cross, and then went into paradise, New Jerusalem, and saw there Enoch and Elijah. And Enoch and Elijah told them the story of how they had not tasted death, but that they would die at the end of days, being killed by the Antichrist, that they would lay in the streets of New Jerusalem for 3.5 days before being resurrected. And so we know that story as the two witnesses of Revelation 11. And so let me go first to Adam this time, and then we'll go to Kylie. Adam?
Yeah, I have such a wild story to share about the two witnesses. And just through all the research I had been doing, studying the order of Melchizedek and just finding when Isaac was taken in by Abraham to teach him in his youth, and then Abraham was brought in under Shem, and Noah, and Shem under Noah, and so on and so on. I just often wonder what did they share about? What was their school of thought and knowledge, and what would have been like to be in their schools? And this book really shows it. I'm sure there was a lot of the other material, like the order of the Magi and that information of the stars and the heavens, and like the book of genealogies and things like that. But this book here is basically the foundation of how they lived and how they thrived. And just finding that small little text was like, oh man, just refreshing to get a little peek and insight into that world. And prior to that, also affirming and believing that Enoch and Elijah are the two witnesses. And also in the same agreement that the city of Enoch is that New Jerusalem and it will descend. And I've prayed many times. I'm like, God, I do believe, that Enoch and Elijah are alive and that they are, that their kingdom was taken up. And what I want a closer relationship and wanting to know what it was like, how to. I wish I could have just been, even a foot soldier in the days of Enoch, and what can I do to better serve and, take me back or something, and how can I further get into this mindset of what they were in. And I spent 2 weeks, I just felt like I hadn't heard from the Lord, and it was the last 2 weeks of December, and it also didn't help that I didn't participate in Christmas this year, which was not easy for the other parts of the family. But that on top of myself, along with just I wasn't hearing anything, I just felt depressed and sad. And really, being a seeker of truth is a lonely path. And I had felt like nobody really understands. My father's such a great man. I keep talking about him, but he's several states away, and I just don't have anybody close here. Well, in those 2 weeks, like I said, I had been just depressed, and you had put forth this book, and I started reading it. I downloaded it and started reading it, and it was just like, here you go. You asked to know about how to be in the order of Enoch. You wanted to hear from the voice of Elijah. Here you go. And I knew nothing about this. I didn't know this text existed, and it was just a witness from God himself to me personally, where I just every chapter, it's only 22 chapters long, but every chapter is jam packed with so much truth, that it just, I felt like I was being initiated in, and like, just here you go, Adam, here's, and it said, I can't remember which chapter, but it talked about at the end of every year, there will be every man will be brought forth, and they will check their accountability and re-interview you. Well, it was January 1st, 2020 that I was reading this information, and it just felt very, very relevant to myself. And just the ecclesia of the first church is no different really than this. They had the same foundational truths of loving thy neighbor and treating your neighbor as yourself, and having a kingdom mindset. Just having that come the way that it came from me really felt like, Adam, you're not alone. Stay true. Well done. Good and faithful. You have and it really just reunited this little ecclesia that you guys, the Digital Readers Club. I had missed a couple because I'd been with family. I just felt like you need to be more present, because this is what it is. Be more present with the fellowship of your group that I guys mentioned about, our little truth think tank, we call it. Just a fellowship of individuals, and be surrounded by those who are lovers of truth. And I can't think of more of a community than that I found myself in, and it's just been such a blessing.
That's awesome. Really quickly, Wide Awake Radio says that Melchizedek, the order of Melchizedek in Gematria is 2020. I thought that was kind of interesting, since that being this year. And one other comment too, and then we'll bring Kylie on, is that we see also in the scriptures that in the description of some of the Great Commission 3, the end time apocalypses, we see that in the millennial age there will be this community where there will no longer be, like the weights and measures that were set up by the children of Cain, the whole concept of money and buying things and purchasing and, paying bills and all that.
Praise the Lord.
That will be all done away with. There will no longer be that kind of a world. It will be all communal. There will no longer be boundaries or private property, that everybody will have enough and people will be led to do the things that interest them the most. Because their contribution to the world and to the community will be the thing that they love to do anyway, with regard to passion, and whether it's art or writing or music, that we will be doing the things that bring worship to the Most High, because that is, that's going to be our livelihood, is showing gratitude, thanksgiving, and honor, praise, and worship to the Most High God, who gave us existence and gave us life and made us in His image. I mean, and, what better thing to do with your every moment than to celebrate your Creator,
Yeah, absolutely.
Kylie?
Amen. Amen to both of you. I can agree with Adam. Actually, I'd pretty much finished my book a couple of months ago, and I was like, Lord, there's got to be more than just the Sabbath and the feast. So I too was searching for more. And this book, Zen, you mentioned it, that you're finishing this book, and I straight away ordered it when it came available. And it even says in this book that Abraham himself prayed for further light concerning his ways. That's in chapter 32. So even though he was brought up with Shem teaching him and Noah, he still yearned. And I think this is the thing. And this is what I see, to be honest. And I might be wrong in this, because I've really only been in the Lord a number of probably 6 or 7 years, I guess, walking closely with him anyway. But I feel that what's happening across the face of the world is that the Lord is drawing people, because I've come across other people that have been taught his ways, the Sabbath and the feast and the like, and they don't know anyone. And I was like that probably 4 years. I didn't know anybody. And when I'd go to church, I thought it was strange. Why don't people see things the way that I do? And I remember saying to the Lord, is there something wrong? What am I not? Why do I not read what they read in the scriptures? And they get something completely different, like it's all been done away with. Yet everything I read says the absolute contrary to it. And I think, you see, it needs to be Spirit-led. And we can read anything and listen to anybody, but we need to be led by His Spirit. And as we are led by His Spirit, He leads us into His truths, providing you are prepared in your heart to do as He says, no matter how silly it looks, and to ignore what man says, no matter how good it seems. And I can see that there is going to come a time, perhaps it's our generation, I believe perhaps it will be, where we will need to band together, where we will need each other, and where we will have to put our resources together to survive, perhaps.
Yes.
And you see, this order of the ancient, I think, for all of us is so important to learn and to do, because we may not have these books and these texts with us, in time.
Right.
And if we don't know His voice and His leading and His ways, then it's going to be difficult for us. But His Spirit, you see, will lead and will guide. And I think that's what's happened with you, Adam, and with myself and with you, Zen, putting this together and coming across these texts. Very, very timely. And I think so I just wanted to bring that out. But also, from what you were reading, Zen, beautiful passage that you've read. It's one of my favourite. I've got it all highlighted and marked. But because thou hast been true and faithful to the covenants which thou hast entered before Him. So for the light that He gives us, we need to be doing and be faithful to that, and then He will show us more. And it talks about being approved of God. And, from the beginning, by the calling of God's own voice, according to His own will, through the voice of His priesthood, unto as many as believed on His name, they were faithful until they had obtained. So, I just think that's a really important point. To make, that we need to be faithful from the first thing he tells us right through all the way, and then he will show us more. And in this text, actually, Zen, it talks about when he starts to write. This is the Elisha. He says, which is very interesting, that the priesthood has been passed down from his father. Just trying to find it now, but he talks about that only part of the priesthood is given to him, not all of it. So the order of Enoch, I've got to find a little bit now, where it says it will be on page 16, 17, or maybe 18. But there is more information out there, even above what's written here in this book that you've compiled, Zen. And I just find that's fascinating too, that once we, implement what is in here, then obviously he'll bring other things to light, I guess, for us to add.
Do well with what you have that is little, and he'll give more. Yeah.
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 So. Yeah, I think this is part of even what he told the angels when they went into rebellion against him, that even though you had studied the mysteries of the heavens, not all was given to you. And how he told Esdras in writing the 200 plus books of information that he restored to him through the scribes, he told them to make 70 available to the masses, but to hide the rest. And so, God reveals as it's almost like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That same kind of concept, and that God guides us and leads us into what even Christ speaks about in Matthew 13 as the secrets kept since the foundations of the world. And so it doesn't take even an order or another person or a training or teaching for us to be guided, but the Holy Spirit will guide us if we just seek and knock. And I want to share just a small passage from the book, The Order of the Ancients, for those that may not have studied it or heard about it or read from it. It says this in verse 2 of chapter 2, I believe it is. Everyone who desireth to enter the order of Enoch must be one who loveth the Lord his God with all his heart, might, mind, and strength, and one who loveth his fellow man as himself, according to the word of the Lord through Moshe. He must covenant to live the law of consecration and to hold all things common with his brethren, according to the pattern set by our first parents. For when they came forth from the garden, they divided not up the land, but held it in common until their posterity, through wickedness, began to lay claim to it for themselves. Behold, this private ownership of the property came to pass through the teaching of that evil combination, which was organized by Cain, that men might get gain for themselves, because of the love of God, and man is not in them. He who entereth the order must be one who is dedicated to seeing the face of God and receiving from him the promise of eternal lives. He must keep the commandment and statutes of the Lord his God, to do what is good and upright in the sight of God, according to that which he commanded through Moshe, the lawgiver, and through his servants, the prophets. He who seeketh to enter the holy order of God must be one who loveth that which the Lord loveth, and hateth that which the Lord hateth. I'll just read one final part. He must keep all the evil far from him, and love to do good, and that his works may bear testimony of his righteousness before God and man. He must be governed by the principles of truth, righteousness, and justice in all he doeth, while in this tabernacle of clay, having repented of his inclination to follow after the dictates of the flesh, no longer doing evil according to the selfishness and jealousy and contentious spirit which dwelleth in the natural man. I'll stop there, but please do read it for yourself, because again, I think it's going to establish the community that we all live under at the end of days, when God restores us back to the harmony of his natural order, and the ways which are not governed by the need to have money to pay bills, or to purchase this or that. That as a community, there will be those that are those that gather and that provide in that manner. There will be others that are creative and that do in that manner. There will be others that will be nurturers, and nothing will be about purchasing or buying or trading or bartering. Everything will be do good for goodness sake. We care for each other. We take care of one another for love's sake, not because we need to buy something or get something from each other or one another. We're going to do it just because we others need, and there will be those that provide those needs in different ways. And so it's everybody helping each other, the body working in sync and harmony, the fellowship of Christ. And how beautiful that's going to be, because
absolutely
there will never be lack. There will never be suffering. Everybody will be well cared for, well provided for, have exactly what they need taken care of.
I wanted to add, it's so spot on. When I was reading the Testament of Job, and in the beginning, before he was tempted, or pardon me, the devil came after him, it went into great detail about his land and his house, and how he had these tables set up for any man who enters any gate. There's always food ready for you. There's music playing. He would join in with the music and play to the widowers, and he had flocks of sheep that were dedicated just for the widowers and the poor and the naked, and just the whole way it painted this picture was so beautiful. I couldn't think nothing else but, the millennial reign of what that would be like, and just what a humble man he was, and that it's just beautiful.
And that's the way God provides, because he's pouring the blessings of bounty upon all of us equally, and he's not charging us anything. All he wants is our love and our dedication and a little gratitude, and how difficult is that?
Right. Absolutely.
Yes.
Go ahead, Adam. You were.
Yeah. Well, it said that love what God loves and hate what God hates, and I instantly thought of the second witness of John 14:23 and 24, where from Christ himself is making a direct correlation here, saying, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me.
Amen.
And that's exactly what's being said here. And to full circle with what Kylie was saying of people in churches and pastors that are just, how are you not seeing this? How are you not seeing what I'm seeing in Scripture or hearing these words? Well, if those who do not love me will not obey my teachings. It's right there. It's sad, but that's what it is.
Yes. Kylie?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know how they get from A to Z with the teachings in the church these days, but it's all part of the delusion, the great falling away. I believe. But yes, just following on from what you read, Adam, John 15, verse 16, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit. And I've been learning what fruit is, and fruit is obeying his commandments. Fruit is allowing your life into his order, into his ways, and that from that, and by being different in the world and by showing your light, people can see that he, the light in you and that you are different, and that's how we permeate God's truths in the world. So that your fruit shall remain. And whatsoever you ask of the Father in my name, he shall give it to you. And I command you that you love one another. And if the will, it goes on. But yes, just the same. It's interesting when you read this book that you put together, Zen, of the scrolls. You can see it now in every prophet and in everything written. It's just another layer of understanding. They're all of the same order.
Right.
You can see it in everything that they do and the words that they say. It's really, really lovely and really super. And he doesn't change. Everything is that always was and will be. And, the community living together, I agree, as it's written, that in the millennial reign, we will all be, not earning money. We're going to be living in his order, in his way. And if we don't know it, and if we're not living it now, then we've got a lot of learning to do if we make it. Right. But if we're learning it now and sharing that to others, more and more will be able to come in to his kingdom and be able and be fit for his kingdom. We're not fit for his kingdom if we just say a prayer once a week or, it has to be part of our life, I think.
Absolutely.
Because we need to be useful.
Go ahead.
We need to be useful. I had a business, I employed people. Well, I look at their skill base. Are they available to work these particular days? Well, in a funny way, I think the Lord does the same. What's their skill base? Are they listening to what I'm saying? Are they obeying?
Right.
Are they doing these things? Are they learning? Are they growing? Is their seed on hard land? It's just all gone away in years to come? Or is it flourishing? Are the roots going deep? And I do think that he's impartial of persons. So even though he loves everybody, I feel that he is calling out now for his people to really learn and dig in and, be part of his kingdom. It's exciting and it's going to happen. So we don't want to miss out.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, that's the real purpose of our journey here. And if you're not, in my opinion, living for God and the kingdom, I mean, you're missing out completely.
Goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
true.
I have some people that ask me, well, why does this matter, or why does that matter, and who cares if the earth is a globe or if it's flat, or who cares? It's not salvational, so I don't care. And I think, well, salvation isn't the end, it's the starting point. Like, be saved, don't wait to be saved. Start, pick up your cross and go do what he tells you to do and have this kingdom mindset, and everything else just falls into place. You'll just see God working just nonstop instead of having him work for you. And I think that's kind of how, I really don't like going to church, and I kind of see through and just like, nope, that's not right. Nope, that's not right, like Kylie's saying. And it just seems like they're trying to make the God's word fit, right in your pocket so that you can go about your business and do your shopping and do all these things. And I can't subscribe to that.
Right.
I want to be lived to a higher standard, because none of the stuff, it's just not worth it. Some of these things, I canceled my Netflix and all these other things, and I don't watch TV because this just not, I don't want to put those things in my mind. I'd rather just read and discover, because like Kylie said, what happens if all this information goes away? And everything's digital now. There might not be a burning of books, but you turn off the electricity and you got nothing.
Right.
How do you witness then?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just to go on about the flat earth, why does it matter? And people say it's not salvational. Well, I think God tells us in his order to speak the truth. And it doesn't matter whether it's salvational or not. It's the truth.
Right.
And the truth
Exactly.
needs to know, it stands on its own. We don't have to defend it. Just
You can't hold on to one simple truth, then how can you hold on to these other truths? It's like, the story of the Christ giving out the talents. Well, what are you going to do with, this piece of truth? Well, I buried it in the dirt, Lord, because it just didn't seem like it was benefiting my life. Well, then you're not going to get more truths.
Yes.
Right.
It's true.
And then also, with regard to that, I mean, if you don't understand how big this deception and how we've been indoctrinated and into lies and propaganda, you really don't understand to what degree the lie and the matrix of illusion really has us believing things that aren't even real, have no basis in reality. And everything we think of as far as the solar system and life evolving on all these stars being all these different galaxies and the ever expanding universe, all of that is false. And how much deception have they indoctrinated us into? And then again, if we don't understand that they have taught us and that we bought into this as all deceit, we really, we are trusting and giving our trust to people and organizations that do not in any way deserve it and that shouldn't be trusted and should be questioned. And everything that we think we know of as truth, based upon lies, should be questioned. And especially with regard to the whole thing of the coming ancient aliens are our creators and that whole deception, because that's going to be huge and it's going to be tied into this whole the foundation of the Darwinian Copernican model for understanding world. And so people that don't think it has any importance, well, it's going to be very relevant during that time.
Yeah, I was reading Joshua this morning, somewhere maybe near the end, where the how they slowly were making the tribe of Jacob, start to build all the, I forget the two towns or two cities that he had them build. Well, slowly, they started pulling the Egyptians out, so that it was just more and more it's Israelites that were building it, and then they pulled out their pay, and they stopped, they slowly stopped to chip away parts of them, so it just was them becoming slaves. Well, the only people that didn't participate was the tribe of Judah, or pardon me, the Levi, because they saw right through it from the very beginning. They saw what was going on.
Yes.
So I got a chuckle out of that. Like, these people didn't have to break their backs. They didn't have to forced labor. They weren't under slavery because they knew what was happening. They knew what was coming. And that is what's going to be coming now. You're going to be under this slavement. You're going to be having to do these labors and having to break your back to make, one loaf of bread is going to cost a brick of gold or however that works. So I just saw the parallel and thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Yeah, that is a parallel to the times that we're in for sure.
It's interesting too that there's in chapter 20 of Abraham, it talks about also regarding the teaching of this order that those, it's like throwing your pearls in front of the swine, that those that of the world, what I'm trying to say is that it's really only those that are already obeying the Sabbath and the feasts, or those that there's steps, I suppose. Not to share with those that are not sincerely seeking the truth. It just talks a bit about it there. For this is a time of preparation for meeting the Lord, and a time when the elect must be careful not to mingle with the wicked, lest they be led to return aside by the way through the cunning craftiness of the evil ones. And I suppose, in this day and age that we live in this world with so much deception and so much trickery at every corner, nearly everything I think that the world throws at us is trickery at the moment, from inoculations to going to the doctor to the education system, everything that comes on the TV, the true nature of the world, global warming or cooling, and just the importance to keep your mind clean and clear and it comes down to separating ourselves, I think. There's going to come a time where, like Adam, you're saying, you don't have a tally now, or you turn it off, and not doing social media. And I think we all need to be very careful to separate ourselves so that we don't get caught into trickery of the world, but to
let God be true and all men be a fool.
Liar, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because, the devil will be out, as he is, of course, to trick everybody. And, I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, that's a most difficult thing for a lot of people. I mean, look at, especially, Generation X and the children that are growing up with technology and how they cannot separate themselves from their phones. I mean, to even take part in or look at or take a moment to just be witness to what's going on in the world. It's like they have to be completely tied into technology, always Facebook or, status updates. It's like they can't even walk without looking down at their phones. And you see these videos where people are falling into fountains, walking off of the subway, the Amtrak. I mean,
wow.
Falling onto the tracks, yeah, and even causing themselves to be killed. I mean, just from having not being able to disconnect. It's sad. It's crazy, but that's the way that it is. And the devil has certainly established the matrix of this world to keep us locked into the entertainments and the distractions and all that, the preoccupation with carnality and materialism and things of that nature. And so, I think part of the disconnect of what you were talking about is in finding, and I think that this is also the reason why the Most High established Sabbath, was to give us at least one day to where we could break from routine, and that we would have built in a day of rest and a day of where we could focus on the things of the kingdom, that we could spend moments in worship and gratitude, thanksgiving with him, to just, especially for those that do have appreciation and that do have a mind for being thankful and giving gratitude to the Most High, that do celebrate a moment of prayer, that pray over their food, pray over their water, whatever, just pray for awakening to new day. I mean, it doesn't have to be that, we pray over the stuff that he gives us, but just simple appreciation. I think a lot of people are missing that in their lives, and there's a lot of people that are completely disconnected from that kind of a relationship with the world, and that there's a lot that feel entitled and even get bored, with quiet. And I don't understand that either.
I love the quiet.
Yeah, and I myself, I don't ever get bored. I mean, there's always, and even if I'm not doing something, just I like the peace and the quiet and the no drama, and I have no problem being with and by myself and just hanging out in a moment of sunshine and being with the creation, just watching it unfold as it is daily. I mean, that to me is a moment of peace and tranquility, and like church. That's my church, to
Right.
be with the creation and prayer in that manner. And most people hate that. They're like, always want to be with somebody, always want to be talking in conversation, engaged by stimulus, and they forget, and none of them.
It's that instant gratification that they get from their phones and
right,
the apps and the shopping.
Yeah, and all the
now
stimulus. Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's a drug. It's the same. It does the same chemicals in your brain that you do if you're doing, opioids or heroin or drugs. It's no different.
Yes.
But I think
need all that stimulus.
I mean, I don't. To me, like a prayer life isn't necessary. I mean, I bless all the food before I eat. And I thought it was interesting that in the book of the order, it's very clear that they observe the Sabbath, observe the festivals and the feasts and the fasts, and pray 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. So it affirms what you just said, that even on those 6 days, just morning, noon, and evening, just thank the Lord.
Yes,
it's really that simple. Just give him thanks thank you that I was able to breathe today and eat today and see your creation and talk with somebody. Like that's worth being thankful for.
Yeah, special.
It doesn't have to be like a specific holy prayer. Just fellowship and commune with your Creator in a natural way. He's listening.
Yes. And every meal is blessing. Everything you drink is blessing. Every breath we take is blessing. And most people don't realize that, don't acknowledge it, don't recognize it, and it's unfortunate. Kylie, you had something to say?
Oh, no, totally agree. Yes, amen.
Yeah,
I don't really have too much more to add, I don't think.
I'll share a passage from Matthew 6 really quickly, the verse 14. For if you forgive men their trespass, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. You know what? This is the wrong one. Go ahead, Adam. You had a comment. I just actually misplaced what I was going to say.
It was kind of a time travel question. I was asked. You said you were reading earlier chapter 2 of the book of the Order, and I'm glad that you did, because I went to say something beforehand that felt like it needed to be read over the air, and so I thought that was appropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I thought that was but what I was going to read was actually verse 25, where it says, "Take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Behold, the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are you not better than they? Which of you, be taking thought, can add 1 cubit unto his stature? And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? And so, therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewith shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that what ye have need, all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. And so, I really love that chapter and those verses, and it really puts into perspective, the kind of mindset, how we should just trust God, be with the moment, and not worry about the past or the future, but be here now and celebrate and give gratitude and thankfulness for what is and for what he pours upon us in bounty and blessing. And that is kind of living living prayer. That's, church for me.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah, I have a highlighted text right here from the book that echoes just exactly what you read in Matthew's. It's 3 verses here. All those who walk in that path which is set before them by the Spirit of truth shall receive health in their navel and marrow to their bones, and shall find wisdom and hidden treasures of knowledge. These shall inherit eternal lives, even the continuation of the seeds forever and ever, worlds without end. Eternal shall be their blessings, and everlasting their joy in the realms of glory. For they shall be crowned with light and robed in the glory, and shall dwell in the everlasting burnings in the presence of our God.
Amen.
I long for that.
Amen. I'm with you, brother.
Amen.
Kylie, we've got about the 3 minutes remaining, so I want to give you both each chance for final comment.
Well, there's just a reading from Jubilees. I was just going to read out that.
Please.
It reads this. I found it written in the books of my forefathers, and in the words of Enoch, and in the words of Noah. And then I've just got some notes here that, some of the law of the ancients were written by the hand of these men for all generations to learn. They're laws forever. It's a continuation from what has always been.
Right.
So, my final words were, probably just thank you, Zen, for putting this book together, the 3 texts or 3 scrolls from Elijah to his adopted son Elisha, and the 2 from Abraham. Holy be his name, that he's giving these things to us to learn and to read and to be encouraged.
Amen. It's my great honor. Yeah. Thank you, and all those like you two that are reading and studying these things, because, more than anything, as a person that loves these texts and loves these scriptures myself, it gives me great pleasure to be able to put them together for others like yourself that are truth seekers and that are, living and prioritizing the kingdom. What greater blessing to serve in that manner.
Absolutely.
Adam?
I also echo that. God put you in my path and has greatly blessed me, and I am so thankful for your work and your dedication, and you're so patient with everybody and bringing the truth in such a gentle way. And it's just, I know from the community, from the behind the scenes, that it's highly praised, highly welcomed, and just going to continue to support your work. And you're just such a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I just want to say that it is all for the glory, all for the praise and honor of the Most High God, and let everything reflect upon Him that
Amen.
Blesses and provides for us, and just such bounty. We are not worthy, but He loves us so much, and we appreciate it so very much. So thank the Most High God, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Praise the Lord.
All right. Well, thank you both, and we'll do it again. Yeah. I'm sure
there's so much to talk about.
So much to talk about, so much to say. So, and we'll be able to in next show go into greater detail on these things, and we can follow it up through history and time to where we are now. All right, everybody. God bless you. Thank you for your seeking, and we'll talk to you. I'll be on with Rob midnight to 2 a.m. So.
Oh goodness, I'll be praying for you.
All right, thanks, brother. God bless you.
Shalom.
Good night, all. Shalom.
Shalom.
Bye.